This is a dam, and this is a dam. This is a dam, and this, and this, and this is a dam. All dams, and they all affect our environment. Some more than others, even the pretty ones, even the new ones, even the tiny ones. Many people don't even think about it, but the research and the evidence and the proof is there. Dams are riddled with fatal flaws that affect our ecosystem, the rivers they call home, and the environment as a whole. Sure, they're known to generate power and hold back floods, but that's just a small part of their long-reaching effects. Slightly less known is their detrimental effect on fish migration, aquatic life, the riparian locale, human well-being, and even the Earth's atmosphere. The process of dam removal is already underway in some areas, but that's not enough. People everywhere need to know how adverse dams really are, and that's just what we're about to show you. Behold, the mighty river. For billions of years it was unimpeded, slowly carving its way through the Earth's natural landscapes, forming valleys and canyons in the process, along the way being the perfect natural habitat for many species of fish and plants. Then, slowly but surely, the human race began to evolve and realize the greater potential of the river. Because of the vital role that water serves, in addition to an increasing population with a fear of water shortage, our ancestors devised a method to pool a large quantity of water in a reservoir by cutting off the flow of water at a certain point of the river. Not only did this secure drinking water for the nearby inhabitants, but it was also a form of flood control and eventually a method of so-called clean energy production. Of course, the benefits for humans are surely there, but we must ask ourselves, at what cost? When did the benefits of damming surrender to their disadvantages? And what can be done to reverse their effects? On the Housatonic River, located in southwestern Connecticut, the dams that we had access to were the Chippewa Dam, built in 1955, and the Stevenson Dam, built in 1919, a mere 10 miles south. Both dams were contracted by Connecticut Light and Power Company, purposed to generate energy for the surrounding areas. At roughly 140 feet tall, these are considered large dams by the International Rivers Association, though the ecological and societal implications are much larger. Perhaps the most obvious result that damming has on the river is its effect on fish migration and the consequences on aquatic life in general. Some fish, like salmon, shad, eel, herring, and even mussels, all of which call the Housatonic River their home, require upstream and downstream movement to spawn, as after birth they migrate downstream to live and grow, then return upstream to breed and lay eggs where they themselves were originally born, or vice versa. The process of damming clearly becomes problematic then, as dams greatly restrict up and or downstream movement, which is critical for certain species of fish to survive and reproduce. Although there have been some efforts of creating and maintaining fish passage structures, also known as fish ladders, which allow fish to bypass dams blocking the way, the overwhelming majority of fish are impeded on dammed rivers during their migration period. Not only are their migratory effects hindered, but their livelihood is at stake as well. When water is slowed to a near stop in reservoirs, the temperature is warmed to unsuitable temperatures for some species of fish. On a small scale, this isn't problematic, but when dam rivers account for 1/6 of American waterways, it becomes an issue. In Connecticut alone, the Department of Environmental Protection plans to restore some of the more endangered fish, complete restoration of which would result in nearly 200,000 American shad and almost 3 million river herring. Let's move to the banks of the Housatonic and look at how these dams affect the riparian ecosystem, which includes everything that lives along the side of the river and is directly affected by the river that runs through it. The natural flow regime defines the environment of a river largely by physical processes, especially the movement of water and sediment within the channel. Given that, it's interesting to note that these dams don't only impede fish attempting to migrate, but they also impede yet another crucial component of the riparian environment: sediment. Only the finest of sediment makes its way through the dams and down the river, which has many severe consequences. With a substantially reduced sediment load, the water released from dams erode areas downstream, reducing habitat availability for a plethora of species. Just a few hundred feet downstream from the Chippewa Dam, the Mitchell Farm certainly feels a lack of sediment, which lessens the amount of nutrients in the soils that sustain fertile lands far beyond the banks of the river. Beyond sediment, water levels themselves are also affected by dams. Known as peak power operations, hydroelectric dams can experience times where they must work at the highest possible power output. This draws huge amounts of water out of the reservoir to turn the turbines and, as a result, can drastically alter the water levels downstream of the dam. For instance, below the Stevenson Dam, water levels can fluctuate 30 or 40 feet in just one day. This not only degrades the shoreline even further, but also disturbs fisheries, waterfowl and bottom-dwelling organisms, as they rely on relatively consistent water levels that dams can vary greatly. Without proper water and soil conditions, the entire riparian ecosystem suffers, all thanks to the dam. No, really, we do have a lot to thank our dams for. They give us reliable energy, prevent floods, and supply us with local drinking water at the same time through the reservoirs they create. But they can even affect the air that we breathe, as some dams effectively put more methane into our atmosphere than fossil fuels do. But that's a story for another day. Economically, the hydro industry is booming, currently employing 250,000 people in the US alone. But that's nothing compared to the number of people who've been physically displaced to make room for a dam and reservoir construction worldwide, a number that amounts to 80 million. It's an incredibly time-consuming, expensive, and mentally scarring process that could be completely avoided by not damming, at least to the extent that we are today. Entire families, neighbourhoods, and sometimes towns have been forced to pack up, close up, and move out to make a way for what? A dam that helps us a little and hurts everything else a lot. Those were the dams we had access to, 2 seemingly random dams in rural Connecticut. For the purpose of this documentary, they were completely arbitrary, but they can be seen as many dams, 2 out of the 800,000 across the world. Every dam can be held accountable for its effect on the environment, just to different extents depending on its size and location and use. In terms of our dams, public support is slow going. The cost of completely removing the Chippewa or Stevenson Dam is estimated in the millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars price range. And honestly, it's hard to ignore the energy they generate. Between the 2 dams, they can power anywhere from 53,000 to 71,000 households. Due to the perceived benefits and extreme costs associated with the complete removal of dams of this size, efforts are focused more on partial solutions like fish ladders. However, as we discussed earlier, they're only an attempt at solving one of the many problems with damming and create other problems in the process. Not all hope is lost, however. A recent trend of dam removal has started, and it aims to reverse or at least mitigate the side effects of dam implementation. Results are seen almost immediately. In the May 2015 issue of Science Journal, it was reported by researchers from the US Geological Survey and the US Forest Service, who examined 100 dam removals, found that sediments from the former reservoirs were transported downstream quickly, and that the river channels, beaches and deltas were restored within months or a few years. Fish also migrated upriver soon after dam removals. Recolonizations and restorations of displaced plants, however, are taking longer. The issue of damming is nothing new, but it's only now becoming known to the public at large, and it's up to us to secure the fate of our rivers. Those pluses of damming certainly cannot be ignored, but we must find a better balance between us and the environment that we inhabit, use, and in instances like this, exploit. Without steps taken now, we'll only lose more and more control. Now that we've seen all the damage that dams do, it's up to us to do something, and damn the dams.